more specifically music composition. I was interested in this topic because I already have some experience with it. I love to compose music and play around with it, and so I sort of wanted to take it to a more intellectual level. And so I had to focus in a little bit because music composition is a big topic. And so I focused on 3 musical genres I wanted to study: jazz music, rock and roll music, and classical music, specifically symphonies. And so I came up with an essential question, which was, how can we identify musical genres based on the unique characteristics of that musical genre? And I used that to guide my research. So basically, I wanted to know what made each genre unique, what the unique elements in each genre of music, and sort of why when someone hears a song, they can identify the genre without knowing anything about the genre of the song. So once I did my research, I decided I wanted my project to be writing a short song in each genre, a really basic short song to show what I learned, and I'll be sharing those tonight. So some other questions I'll be answering tonight are obviously what make each genre unique. So I'll be naming some unique elements from each genre. What makes music in general? I had to study this because I was going to be writing songs, and so I'm going to give some basic parts about music. And why do people like or dislike the genres? What do they feel about them? So to start off, I want to talk a little bit about something that I've sort of figured out through my research. I've never had any facts on this. It's just something I've sort of noticed and been trying to sort of support my idea. Jazz, I found it as sort of a musician's genre. People like to play jazz more. Rock and roll is more of a listener's genre. People tend to like to listen to rock and roll. And this symphony or classical music tends to be a composer genre. And people like to compose classical music. So in order to support this idea or to see if this was correct, I took a survey with some adults and kids. I took 2 surveys. And this is what I got. For the adults, 33 adults, 4 of them like classical the most, 5 like jazz the most, and 24 like rock and roll the most. This already sort of proves that rock and roll tends to be a listener genre. Those who like classical, most of them liked it because it's intellectual. They like the intellectual feel. And obviously composers want to compose things that are more complicated so they can use their knowledge. The 5 people who like jazz, most of them liked it because they played instruments in it, like the saxophone, and that's because it's a musician genre. And those who liked rock and roll liked it because they've always liked it since childhood. It's energizing, it's exciting, and it's a very basic, simple structure, so they can sort of multitask with it. For the kids survey, out of 34 kids, 30 of them liked rock and roll the best, and they liked it due to instrumentation. Their parents listened to it. They've been learning about it in class. It's obviously upbeat and exciting, and teenagers like that. And they can relate to the lyrics, which is important in rock and roll music. As you can see, I studied a little bit on how each genres are separate, and after that I sort of wanted to study a little bit about, how they're similar. And I found some ideas how they're similar in roots and in form, but sort of a way to prove it tonight. I took this idea of music I made. So I made this idea, and in each of my songs, I bend and shape this idea to sort of fit the genre. And at the end of my presentation, I'll see if you guys can spot it in the music when I play it. And at the end of my presentation, I'll be talking a little bit about it. So now I'll talk a little bit about what makes music. So music has 3 basic elements: rhythm, melody, and harmony. Rhythm is also split into 3 basic elements: beat, meter, and tempo. The beat is basically the general pulse of the music. It's usually played by percussion instruments like drums, occasionally keyboards or basses. The meter is how the beat is counted. So a couple ways beat is counted. This right here is a time signature, or a fraction. It's a time signature. The top number describes how many beats are in each measure. So if you're reading music, standard notation, each line, in between each line would be a measure, each bar line. So we know there's 4 beats in each of these measures. And the bottom number describes what kind of beat it is. So 4 stands for a quarter note. And there's other notes, 1/8 notes, half notes, etc. But with this time signature, we now know that there's 4 quarter notes in each of these measures. So it helps us count our music and find the rhythm. The next basic element of music is melody, which you probably all know what it is. It's just the main musical idea of the piece. It's what the piece is based off of. But the melody is always usually built off of harmony, which is chord progressions or arpeggios sort of that carry out through the piece and carry it along. So, for example, a chord would be basically 2 or more notes played at a time, all chords. And so a harmony or chord progression I could do would be a C major chord, an A minor chord, an F major chord, and a G major chord, triads. These are all chords. And so in the whole piece I was doing this with one instrument. My melody would just be built off these chords. So if I use the exact same notes, I could do something like... And basically I already have the beginnings of a song by using harmony and melody. So key, I'll go over briefly, is the main scale that a song's based off of. So if we have right here, these are all keys. A C major would basically sound like that, and it's playing all the white keys here. And so the whole song will be based off C, the note, and all the white keys, basically. And then the sharps and flats for the other keys put in black notes on the scale. Okay, so now I'll talk a little bit about jazz music. So jazz roots, it comes from African American rhythms and some European influences, and comes from early American slave chants and spiritual songs. Some unique characteristics of jazz, a really big one is syncopation, which is basically playing on the offbeat. So if we had a beat, the snapping would be the offbeat. We hit that hard in jazz, and it brings out this sort of swing feel that people like in jazz. Improvisation's another big part. It's basically playing music without having it pre-planned. It's always usually based off the harmony, and it takes a unique pattern called this call and response pattern, which comes from the slave plantation chants, where the soloist will issue a call and the other musicians will call back, basically. Then there's triplets, which is playing 3 beats to 1 beat, basically. So if we had a beat, we'd be going like kind of like that. So we do 1, 2, 3 in each beat. And there's blue or flatted notes, so blue scales and black keys. And then there's sevenths and ninths, which are where we take the chords. We take a note count of 7, we have a 7th. We take jazz chords, and then ninths, which are up 9. Those are used in jazz a lot. And so here we have basic instrumentation, and let's see if you can look for these while I play my music. We can start it. I'm talking about form a little bit while we play it. So for my song, I have all these basic instruments in it. Can we start over?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay. So this one, just using piano. I'm playing 7th chords. I described before, up 7 notes, and I put a triad in it to make someone get it. And for my song, I'm going to be using something called rondo form. It's a kind of form they can use in jazz. I have a saxophone for my soloing instrument, and it'll be doing some improvisation in this piece. So this is sort of an intro. We're going to theme A right now. So basically the piano's playing the offbeat with the drum beat sort of bringing out a swing feel. Now we're in theme B, and I'm just playing a basic harmony with the piano, the same chords over and over, and I'm soloing with my saxophone. And basically, all 3 of these instruments are playing the same thing the entire time, almost. And I'm just improvising with that. We're back to theme A now. So basically, what's unique about rondo form is it always goes to different new themes and always back to the original theme. So now we're in theme C with more improvisation on the saxophone. Now we're going back to theme A. And I'm not going to keep going. This thing can go forever, but I'll be ending here. No, we'll let it go. So that would be a basic jazz song. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about rock and roll music. So, rock and roll roots mostly comes from classical music with some western or country in it. So, rock and roll can basically be described as music with a strong backbeat and electric guitars. So what it means by strong backbeat is, it's unlike jazz where we play the offbeat, we hit the onbeat really hard, so we'd be hitting it really hard in rock and roll. And that also makes it really basic, which is unique in rock and roll. And it also has distortion, like main riffs is what we call it we can call it in rock and roll, just sort of a main idea that we always come back to. Lyrics, usually based off modern themes, always come back. They're made for the listener to relate to, and it's a very basic and simple structure. It doesn't have really complex harmony, so that's why people like to listen to it. So if we can play the song now, this would be basic instrumentation, and I'll have all of these. I won't have the extra instruments, but this is my main riff with distortion of my guitar, and that's my intro. So this is a basic rock and roll song form. So now I go into my first verse using all these instruments. So and then I'll end up being between two verses. And I have a basic rock drum beat basically going here. It's a basic beat. So now I'll be going into the chorus, and I'm substituting guitar for lyrics because I didn't want to sing, but lyrics are kind of important. So now I'll be going back into a verse, and I'll just do one verse here. The bass guitar is basically playing one note harmony. Couldn't help myself. Now I'm back to chorus. So, and then I'll go into a solo or bridge. I'm going back to my main riff here, main idea. I'm kind of messing with it a little bit. Back to chorus to help us lead out. And leading out in the song. So that would be a basic, really basic rock and roll song. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about classical music, or specifically symphonies, which I'll be studying. So right here is, symphonies are orchestral. They'll play with an orchestra. So to kind of give you a visual, I have the basic instruments of an orchestra. These are, usually have these in an orchestra. There's other instruments you can put in, these are basic. Usually when you set up an orchestra, you set it up in 2s, 3s, and 4s. So, especially for woodwinds and brass. Percussion, you usually have about one of each. So, and then like strings, we'd have first, second violins, usually about 12 players. Violas, maybe 6 to 8. But for woodwinds and brass, we keep it 2s, 3s, and 4s. So maybe 4 French horns, 2 flutes, 3 clarinets, and that's how you basically keep it in that sort of format. This here is a basic arrangement of a symphony. So when they set up a symphony to perform, they arrange it in this format here. Brass isn't usually that, because they're really loud. So classical music roots, it's a really old genre. Basically it comes from Western Europe. It goes back to Middle Ages, and in order, periods of classical music are Middle Ages, Renaissance, Baroque period, classical, romantic, and contemporary, which is what we call nowadays. So some unique characteristics of symphonies. There are no lyrics, obviously. It's orchestral, played with an orchestra like I just explained. And it comes in 4 movements. So movement is almost like a mini song in the symphony. So starting in the classical era, we began 4 movement symphonies, or what they call mature classical symphonies. Before that, we usually had 3 movements. And so basically, the first movement is a faster movement, the second is a slower, the third is a dance, and the last is like a faster one. It combines all the ideas. So I'll be doing this one. So I wrote a symphony to show this idea. It has a little more. Okay. This is my first movement. It's sort of fast movement. I'm using sonata form, which is very similar to rock and roll form. So I just finished theme A. I'm going to theme B right now. Can you turn a little louder? Using a basic orchestra. I'm about to go into what we call the development stage, where we mix the ideas together and sort of mess around with them. It's right here. So now I'll be moving to my second movement, which is a slower movement, using ternary form for this one. So that was in the middle of my theme A right now. Going to my theme B right now. So we're about to come back to our original theme A here. Right here. We'll be leading out. So now I'm going to my third movement, which is a dance. I put it in sort of a waltz format. So, and I'm also using ternary form. This is my theme A right now. Now we're going to theme B, and what I try to do is I try to make the harmonies really complex together. A lot of instruments playing different things, because symphonies are usually very complex right like that. That's why it puts a lot of people to sleep. Going back to our theme A. Sort of waltz format with the strings. Okay, now I'm going to my fourth and final movement, where I'm going to combine all the ideas. I'm going to use rondo form, which is the same form we use in jazz, so they're similar in that way, the two genres. So right now in theme A, you're going to be hearing this a lot, because I'm going to keep coming back to it. So we're going to theme B, which is basically similar to the first movement. Back to theme A. And we're going to theme C, which is from the second movement. Just sort of repeating it here. Back to theme A again. We're kind of transitioning to a theme D, which you'll hear is repeated from, well, similar to the third movement, but it's in a minor key we talked about before. This whole movement is in F, an F minor, A minor, and it switches between the two. So. Back to theme A again, which isn't there, but it's there. Be leading out. So that could be a really basic symphony. So really quick before I end, I want to come back to that idea I made in the beginning, this. And so for what I did for the rock and roll song is I kind of put it up pace a little bit and I put in some chords. So this was my beginning and main riff, where I went. You guys remember that? And then for jazz, I added a black key in the middle and I swung it a little bit. and then added a seventh afterwards. This was right at the beginning. I don't know if you'd catch it. Something like that. And then for the symphony, I kind of kept it the same, but it was in my slow movement, the second movement. So I sort of dragged it out a little bit and went. And that's when we went to the other stuff. That stuff. So those would be basic songs from each of those genres. Thank you for listening.